Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. Now, we have obviously documented the disastrous dumpster fire that is all thing Disney, whether it be Marvel, Star Wars, or any Pixar, or any of the rest of the kind of products that they put out over there, decided to be forced with a bunch of diversity, inclusion, and equity nonsense that, of course, damages all the storytelling and gives us, well, disastrous dumpster fires like what we've seen from Star Wars over the last few years. Well, boys and girls, as we've reported on in the past as well, it does seem to be like, at least in some sections of the Walt Disney Company out there, the mob, the cult out there seems to be losing some of its stranglehold. We've heard the reports about all of the activists getting fired inside of Marvel, and then of course we heard from all of the former employees of Disney Pixar out there screaming and crying and whining to IGN that they made us pull all the gay out. Well, boys and girls, it looks like there is one place that the cult will never end up losing its sway over in any way, shape, or form, is that those mob tactics will continue to strong-arm diversity, inclusion, and equity inside of the Walt Disney Company, and of course that is none other than Star Wars, boys and girls. And it turns out the actual giant puppet master that is the disastrous dumpster fire that we find ourselves in the current state of Disney Star Wars is not necessarily who we all expected. Boys and girls, it actually comes from an outside source controlling and manipulating and forcing all of this kind of stuff into the company. Now, needless to say, does not mean that Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni, Bob Iger, and everybody else over there at Disney Star Wars is not completely and totally responsible for capitulating to this mob out there and forcing all of this kind of nonsense. They also give us really crappy storytelling on top of all of that, ladies and gentlemen. So needless to say, even though we are discovering the new evil beast that is out there pushing all this kind of agenda, at the end of the day, it is still Disney Star Wars' fault for listening to these kind of psychopathic mob tactics out there and sacrificing billions of dollars onto the altar of none other than GLAAD, boys and girls. Because as you can see over here from our dear sweet friends over there at fandompulse.substack, Star Wars Insider alleges that Disney works with GLAAD to push evil anti-white agenda and hates their own audience. And yes, boys and girls, it's another insider information story from Eddie Mon himself, and these juicy details are just too much not to cover, not to report on, and not to talk about, because boys and girls, this exposes the underbelly, the inside workings of the Walt Disney Company, specifically Disney Star Wars and Lucasfilm under Kathleen Kennedy. And boys and girls, color a shock there that any of this should not come as a surprise to anybody out there. Once again, it's not even just about necessarily taking Star Wars and turning it into a girls brand. No, boys and girls, they want Star Wars to be purged of any kind of white characters out there. And considering the disastrous dumpster fire that this has turned into, you'd think at some point people would stop listening to these insane activists. But for whatever the reason out there, they continue to go down this path. And this is another shining example of why Star Wars is a dead franchise and it will never get any better. And this is just the latest example of all of the documented dumpster fire evidence that we have, proving that once again, that not only does Disney Star Wars hate its own fan base, but they still believe in the myth of the modern audience. So we're going to share this article from fandompulse.substack.com and from our dear sweet John F. Trent. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing, and I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Does it surprise you at all that Star Wars has found itself in this kind of a completely and totally capitulated to this insane mob out there, and that they are not only so anti-strong male, but they are also so anti-white involved with all of this kind of stuff? Let us know what you think about all that in the comment section down below. And if you'd like to support the channel, please check out the links in the description as well. Become a member. We'd love to have you. So from fandompulse.substack and our dear sweet John F. Trent, a Star Wars insider has shared new details that Disney works alongside LGBTQ plus lobbyist group, aka Mafia, GLAAD, to push an anti-white agenda. YouTuber Eddie Mon shared what his Star Wars insiders told him. First, he detailed how Disney looks at its audience. He said, "From what I was told, Disney looks at the paying customer base in two specific groups. There's the modern audience. That's the one they want to cater to more than anything else. And then there's what they call the problematic audience. That's me and likely you as well." And yes, absolutely, it is definitely us. Proud. We need to get that, boys and girls. I'm going to put that on a t-shirt. One of my boys out there, give me a logo out there that we can put it on a t-shirt. Problematic audience. I want that as a badge of of honor for every single one of us to do. And Eddie Mon, if you didn't put this out there as something like that, what are you doing with yourself? What are you doing? You need to turn this into a t-shirt, because guess what? We're going to around here, because yes, we are part of that problematic audience. And it turns out that problematic audience is actually the majority, boys and girls, which is why Disney has lost hundreds of billions of dollars chasing this modern audience that simply does not exist. It's the audience that always has been here and always will be. These are the same audience that made you billions of dollars at the box office with things like Disney Marvel. They're also the exact same audience that made sure that things like The Marvels flopped and turned into a disastrous dumpster fire at the box office. I wonder if Disney should keep listening to GLAAD or maybe that problematic audience. I wonder which one would work out better for them. As I was told by these sources, Disney is pushing for what they call atomization, is to split the audience up and isolate them from each other. So when you play a game and see all of the woke agenda in it, you feel like you're the only one who notices or cares, which obviously is what sparked a lot of this kind of stuff. I mean, we've talked about that with The Last Jedi. I mean, how many channels were sparked? How many communities, how many fellowships were sparked because of the collective hate for those Disney Star Wars movies and how bad and abysmally garbage they were, while at the entire time, the legacy media institutions out there at the time, you know, the Hollywood Reporter, the Varieties, all of that kind of stuff out there, we're telling you, no, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Why don't you love it? Oh, you must be a bigot. Oh, you must be a racist or a phobe or yada, yada, yada. All of this other same kind of nonsense we had. That's what sparked so much of what you see behind you, the new media out there that is actually represents the audience and the people that actually pay the money out there. Guess what? By the way, I wonder who's getting more views. GLAAD's videos on YouTube or people like Nerdrotic and Political Drinker? Methinks I think that's a pretty obvious as to who the audience actually wants to listen to. The problem is people like us are getting together and calling out things like this all the time. So they want to scatter us with the content, and they don't want until we all walk away while consolidating the modern audience, so to speak, instead to form a stronger base going forward into the future. Pretty much they are doing this in hopes that in the future this modern audience becomes its own behemoth that is equal to or surpasses the current problematic audience, until eventually Disney is no longer required to cater to the wants and needs of the people that they hate anyway. Yes, boys and girls, like if you didn't already know, they do indeed hate you. They don't want any part of you. They hate the fact that they have to cater to you in any way, shape, or form. It probably bugged Bob Iger just as much as everybody out, just as almost as all of the fired Pixar employees to pull all of the gay stuff out of Inside Out. But at the end of the day, the almighty dollar is the actual altar that all of these cultists truly do worship, because at the end of the day, you will run out of other people's money, boys and girls. Next, Eddie Mon detailed the activist and lobbyist group GLAAD wields significant power and influence over the video game companies at large, as well as major entertainment companies like the Walt Disney Company. While Sweet Baby Inc. is definitely a force to be reckoned with in its own right, there is a much bigger fish that controls even Sweet Baby from the strings above. That company is GLAAD. GLAAD, as I'm told, has insane amounts of power when it comes to what they want to see in the media. So much so that they can even stand shoulder to shoulder with places like Disney when it comes to injecting DEI into the content going forward. Yes, boys and girls, GLAAD, the LGBTQ alphabet soup mafia out there, color us shock there with reporter after reporter constantly asking, how gay is this new project? Color us shock there that Disney for some reason thinks that they absolutely represent the majority and that they should be listened to. Well, that's a bold strategy, Cotton. How's it worked out for them so far? Oh, that's right, it hasn't. They've lost billions and billions and billions of dollars. Furthermore, Eddie Mon detailed that Disney despises anyone who is participating in Gamergate 2.0. One of the biggest problems is the problematic audience that Disney hates with all of their being is, of course, Gamergate 2. They find the entire movement repulsive, and they are constantly worrying that anything and everything they make will get targeted by Gamergate 2.0. Oh, I don't know. Here's a strange concept. Maybe don't make a bunch of diversity, inclusion, and equity-filled dribble, and you won't get targeted by the actual fans and audience out there who normally buy your games. I know, strange concept, but take joy in that, boys and girls. Rejoice yourself in knowing the fact that yes, they are indeed afraid of you, exactly as they should be, because just like the last election showed, we are the majority. We are the ruling force in this culture. And guess what? You've spent billions of dollars trying to fabricate this modern audience into being something that, guess what, will never happen. Because at the end of the day, God is still on his throne in heaven, and common sense, surprisingly enough, does reign supreme. Claiming that the power of the movement is snowballing to a point where the entire thing has grown into its own being that simply cannot be stopped. Disney specifically hates Gamergate 2 and wants it gone, but will not give up on diversity, inclusion, and equity or the agenda at large regardless. They truly think they can push these things until we accept them. And as we've shown over the last few years, nope, that dog won't hunt. We don't want no part of your ridiculous, silly diversity and inclusion and equity agenda. Guess what? The hillbillies actually spoke up and they won, because that's exactly how they view us. They view us as a bunch of backwoods, redneck, moron idiots out there, and that's why it absolutely breaks their brain when somebody like, oh, I don't know, green-haired anti-liberal, or some of our other friends that don't have any hair, or some other people out there like, oh, I don't know, oh, Clifton Duncan, a strong black man, a straight, strong black man, by the way, that completely and totally destroys all of their talking points. Yeah, weird how all of that stuff works out. And let's not get started on like, oh, I don't know, Dave Rubin, who absolutely hates all of this kind of stuff too, who is literally married to a man. Yeah, I'm sure that one really gets under GLAAD's skin. As for the people who are running the show at Lucasfilm under Kathleen Kennedy to push this agenda, Eddie Mon identified as the company's senior vice president of franchises content strategy, James Waugh, and Douglas Riley, the vice president of Lucasfilm Games. Oh, yay, the guy that was responsible for uglifying that gorgeous actress in Star Wars Outlaws. Hi, Douglas Riley, we officially know your name too. Maybe you're going to be the next Kathleen Kennedy of the video game industry when it comes to Star Wars. I think that would be fitting. Regarding Waugh, Eddie Mon relayed, I've told he's pretty much Kathleen Kennedy's right-hand man, and whatever he says or votes for speaks for her as well. Yes, that's right. Kathleen Kennedy is completely and totally possessed by the spirit of the age as well. Beneath James are people like Douglas Riley, who is specifically in charge of the games division side when it comes to Disney and their products. As I'm told, and this really annoyed my sources, is that this board has the ultimate power to completely veto and block anything using their IP from ever coming out. That means if you spend money making something, but Disney doesn't like it, too bad, because you have zero say, even though Disney themselves have not really spent a single cent on the project that you have been making for all this time. Providing details about Quantic's Dream's upcoming Star Wars Eclipse game, Eddie Mon revealed how Disney's DEI agenda has affected it. As I'm told by sources, Disney is very hell-bent on ensuring that Eclipse has tons of non-binary and diversity within its characters and world. Oh, joy! It's going to be the Dragon Age Veilguard of the Star Wars universe. Boy, I bet you can't wait for that one. From what I was told, there was originally about 2 white playable characters in the game, but this has now changed as well. I wasn't told the names of the characters or anything, but there's this one white woman in the trailer. That character is no longer a white woman anymore. She is one of the playable characters, but Disney apparently forced Quantic to make her a black woman, citing that they were completely against white representation in the game. Oh, color us shocked there. The only other white character, from what I'm told, is a man who ends up getting gravely injured and becomes a cyborg or some sort of robot. Yay! Trans identity! Woohoo! Probably their brain is placed in a droid or something like that. But the point is that Disney, like I said, would not allow Quantic Dream to have any heroic white representation in Eclipse at all. Everyone has to be diverse, has to have some kind of gender identity, and the only 2 white characters were either erased completely or turned into a robot, as I'm told. This frustrated my sources, who said Disney kept pushing for lots of gender and pandering within Eclipse, and even in many instances where these demands, well, they made zero sense at all. Disney made demands to Quantic Dream to enforce things like non-gendered representation within Eclipse as well. What this means is that Disney mandated that Quantic Dreams add stuff like male aliens in female clothing and vice versa. They wanted the galaxy to be insanely diverse and just go buck wild when it comes to gender identity. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, how many examples do we have to give you of this not working out? Please Disney Star Wars, please do this. Quantic, I'm sorry for you, but please, Disney Star Wars, continue to force this stuff in there, because I cannot wait to roast how many hundreds of millions of dollars you lose on this. And that is going to be exactly what happens with all of this diversity, inclusion, and equity nonsense. Boys and girls, Star Wars is dead, and this is another example of exactly why it's not going to get any better. Next, I want to explain why this is happening. As I'm told, a lot of the reasons why this sort of stuff happens is because Kathleen Kennedy wants to keep the people that she trusts happy with the direction of Disney, who obviously enforces this kind of stuff. He pointed to Jar Jar Abrams and Damon Lindelof as people who greatly support this agenda and want to see more of it at literally any cost. Yeah, by the way, how many movies has Jar Jar Abrams put out recently? Oh, that's right, because everything it touches turns into a disastrous dumpster fire of a flop. Yeah, okay. These various stakeholders in Disney demand gender identity nonsense, so Kathleen Kennedy is appeasing them as best she can, because of course, God forbid she try to stand up and push back against any of the things. No, she's a cult member just like the rest of them. In fact, he then revealed that the whole High Republic initiative, which Eclipse is part of, is an attempt. Oh yeah, by the way, how those High Republic book sales going? To redefine what Star Wars is to the audience at large. The goal is to transition Star Wars from what is into an exclusively non-white, non-straight future going forward. And Disney's editorial board, which I'm told is almost exclusively white people themselves. Oh, color us shocked there. It's more white people going, yes, we can do a better job representing the POCs than those POCs can. Oh, they're just a bunch of dumb fools, and we have to help them. We have to help them. Fucking white savior complex is a disease. It is a cancer among our culture, and it needs to be called out, and that's exactly what we're doing. See whiteness as a problem when it comes to content creation. The exact term I was told, that Disney wants to peel away the whiteness from Star Wars specifically, but they are also trying to get it into every facet of their organization. Yeah, how's that working out for them? Eddieman also shared that GLAAD was involved in the production of the game as well, and was used to basically tell Disney whether the game was woke enough or not, and it didn't matter what anybody working on these games thought. They just had to do what they were told, and that's it. Yes, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and every single one of you out there, I get it. A paycheck is important. You have to feed your kids. But if you are not actively trying to find a way out of this industry and into another company out there, or into a whole other industry that does not force you to do this kind of stuff, I don't know, you're just part of the problem. And let's just be completely and totally honest about that kind of thing. And I'm sorry that is the truth of the matter. But if you don't abandon this kind of stuff, if you don't get out of here, if you continue to allow your talents as an artist or a programmer or any of that kind of stuff out there, if you continue to allow your talents to be used for this kind of stuff, you're just as guilty as the people involved in it. I'm sorry, that's just the reality of things. If the devil is using your art to send more people to hell, guess what? You're going to end up in the exact same place. Because the crazy thing about GLAAD is that they basically set the ideological agenda, and then Sweet Baby and those other guys, they execute it for them. According to my sources, GLAAD told Quantic Dreams that the audience of the future is going to be almost 50-50, with a slant to, so to speak, towards non-binary. So if they want to keep making money in the business, they need to cater to that audience a lot, and therefore anything made by Disney specifically must adhere to this in fear of losing out on potential profits, apparently. What about actual profits? What about current profits that we're seeing right now? You don't have any of those. Disney, you're broke. And it's because you've listened to GLAAD this entire time. They have not been right a single time in any of this. And you are going to find out in the future that if you continue to try to chase this dream, the harsh reality of the world is going to smack you in the face, and you are going to find yourselves bankrupt as a company. I can guarantee you that. Stop listening to these psychopaths. The end goal is here, I'm told, is that Disney and other groups are hoping that with enough content in that time, with the modern audience will become self-sustaining so that they can throw away the problematic audience completely. They hate us, is what I'm told. They think we're awful and racist and are too attached to what they deem as the old ways. I'm also told this agenda of erasing white people is prevalent across the industry. They specifically called out Dragon Age, the Veil Guard, and Concord as being prime examples of what these sort of groups want to see more of in the future. Yeah, how'd that work out for Concord? Sony literally shut it down in less than 2 weeks. He then detailed that all these games are tied to GLAAD. GLAAD is a big reason why these games are the way they are. Lots of trans heroes, lots of gay representation, evil people are always white, and lots of sexual orientation across the board. GLAAD is the puppet master behind pretty much all of this. GLAAD tells Sweet Baby Inc. how high to jump, and they just do as they're told. I was told the other reasons like game Star Wars Outlaws look the way it does, and especially K-Voss being ugly, is actually not because of Ubisoft, but it is due to the demands of GLAAD and Disney. The editorial groups at Disney that works with GLAAD specifically demands that women are not made attractive in any of their media going forward across the board. Disney and GLAAD, as my sources told me, say the big reason is not just because they don't want to sexualize their characters, although that is one of the reasons, but in their view, if a female character is less attractive, that audiences will take her more seriously instead of just seeing her as eye candy. Wow. Seriously, how shallow? Well, this is the thing, right? That's how shallow these people are, right? Because that's always what they do. What they actually represent, what is actually internally inside of them, is what they always try to project. Their own sins, their own evil is what they try to project on other people. Because guess what? You can be hot and really smart as well. You know, there's plenty of examples in our own corner of the internet. Look at Vera Dark. She's a beautiful woman. She's also super, super smart and very intelligent. There's plenty of other examples of that throughout the entire fellowship of really strong, independent-minded women who can think for themselves and also look great. The idea of the fact, I mean, what does that make them think of other women? How much does that show you how abysmally bad they think of other women? They automatically assume that if you're beautiful, you're stupid? Who's the real sexist here, boys and girls? Well, you know, it's Disney Star Wars. They are the real racists because they clearly hate white people. And yes, boys and girls, if you hate any race based on their immutable characters and not the content of their character, then yes, guess what? You're a racist. It's just now it's okay to be racist against white people because apparently that's the new trendy thing. This is absolute insanity. This is absolute garbage. And I hope they keep going down this path because I have no problem standing on your grave and peeing on it because of what you have done to Disney Star Wars. Whereas at a point where you just need to shelve this stuff and make it all go away for a very long time until this insanity with the woke agenda-driven nonsense finally passes and dies off the way we have seen 2024 literally watch this happen. How many times? I mean, Disney themselves understands that this does not work. They fired all of the activists inside of Marvel. They fired all of their activists inside of Pixar. We know because we heard from these employees crying about how they had to pull the gay out of Inside Out 2. And guess what? It worked out. That movie was a billion-dollar success and went really well for them. So here's the real question, Disney, and specifically here with Star Wars. It looks like, who are you going to listen to? Are you going to continue to chase this modern audience that does not exist? Or are you going to actually go back to the tried and true method of listening to the problematic audience that actually pays your bills? Well, it seems like, at least in certain sections of Disney out there, some of this seems to be going to the wayside. We've heard about time and time again, the layoff after layoff and the new projects that are coming forward and the things that are changing. At the exact same time, it does not look, and this is something that lines up exactly with what Chris Gore told us, is that Disney Star Wars is never going to change. As long as Kathleen Kennedy and the rest of the leadership over there at Disney Star Wars out there continue to listen to all of these insane people over there at GLAAD, they will continue to flop and fail. And guess what? By all means, continue to dancing with the devil and you will continue to get burned. And we have shown you this time and time again. At some point, you will indeed run out of other people's money. The real question is, Disney or Star Wars, are you going to change your ways or are you going to go broke? Because that's exactly what happens. And I will be absolutely laughing my butt off all the way to the bank on all of the views I'm going to get on the video when I get to finally go, hey, guess what? Disney damaged the Star Wars brand so much that they've closed Lucasfilm and fired most of the employees involved. Will that day ever come? Maybe, maybe not. I have no idea. But at the end of the day, continuing to listen to these listening to the mob that is GLAAD out there will only lead you down one path and one path only. And that is another disastrous dumpster fire. So go all out, Star Wars. Go all out, Kathleen Kennedy. Have your fun. We will literally roast you and laugh over the ashes of your dead and dying corpse. Because at the end of the day, Disney Star Wars, you have done this to yourself. Dance with the devil and you will get burned.